Good morning and welcome back to Coffee with Chosen. My name is Jenny Lord and I am so honored to be here today with Sam Collier. Sam is a pastor, speaker, and writer. He is the host of a TV show and podcast called A Greater Story, and he is also a speaker and host at Andy Stanley's North Point Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia, and recently spoke at Hillsong, California. You may have heard that he's got a new book coming out, which is in his background, called A Greater Story. He is an adult adoptee and has a greater story. So I am so honored that you're here with us today, Sam. Thanks for being with us.
Jenny, I'm just so excited. Listen, your reputation precedes you, and I felt like I already knew you before we talked. And honestly, this is a huge honor for me. I am doing a lot of press right now, but anytime I get to speak to the adoption foster care community, it is something that is so close to my heart, and it's so special. And so this is truly an honor.
Well, thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about this. Give us a little synopsis of this book that you've got coming out next week.
Yeah, for sure. I am excited. I brought it with me just in case. It's my first major publishing release. I'm so excited. It's called A Greater Story, and it is the idea that when your story connects to God's story, it leads to a greater story. And it was birthed out of a moment on the Steve Harvey show. It's one of the reasons Steve graced us with the ability to use kind of his quote and his name and all these other things just to connect the dots between this incredible movement that has begun and that began from his show about 6 years ago. I met my biological family on the Steve Harvey show after 25 years. And it was insane. Long story short, our mother was 21 when she had me and my twin sister. She had 3 kids already. That's 5 kids, age 21. Extreme poverty, dad addicted to drugs and all types of substances. He actually passed from COVID-19 a couple months ago. He had diabetes, and was in New York City when New York was kind of the hotbed, was in the hospital. And ended up leaving to go and get more drugs and contracted COVID-19 on the streets of New York and passed away. And just a huge example of just kind of what he was like and why he wasn't there, so on and so forth. Long story short, our mother gives us up for adoption. We get adopted by this middle-class Black family, which is awesome. They came to adopt us, and the lady that was running the home where we were staying as infants told our parents we probably weren't going to be much, so they shouldn't adopt us because of where we came from in terms of crack and addiction and prostitution and all these other things, which is when you look through the adoption papers, you have your closed adoptions. They traced some of my mother's steps back to a prostitution house. Don't know if she was prostituting or if she was just living there, but they said they're probably not going to be much. In fact, they'll probably be mentally challenged is what they told them. And they prayed and said that God told them, no, we would be okay. We're their kids. They took us home, raised us. My sister got all A's from kindergarten up to 12th grade, dual scholarship to Spelman and Georgia Tech, became an industrial engineer. And I'm here with Chosen, right? I mean, it's like so many other things, some amazing things happen. And God just kind of rewrote our story in that moment with the interference of, or by the interference of our parents that raised us and adopted us. Some years went by, and my father actually came to us and said, hey, I think that you need to go find your birth family around age 24. And we were like, what do you mean? Just out of nowhere. He said, I think the time is now for you to go and find them. And I said, okay. And I said, it's up to Sarah, my sister, because I was open to it, but I didn't, either way it went, I was fine. I know my sister had a little bit more emotions around it. And so I told her it was up to her. And my father, who had a barbershop on Auburn Avenue, would watch the Steve Harvey show every day. And so he said that the Lord told him that Steve Harvey was going to help us find our parents. In the same moment, he's telling us that it's time for us to go find, so on and so forth. And so I thought he was crazy and left the picture 2 weeks later, I find out he convinces my sister to write in. I asked her why she did that. She said he kept yelling. He's from the country. He's loud. And not all people from the country are loud, but he's loud. And she said, Ellen's not going to write us back. Steve's not going to write us back. A year goes by. They call us and they say, we think we can help you find your biological family. Do you want to do it? And call my sister. And she says, no, I don't want to do it. But I feel like God is doing something and we need to do it. So we went up there and they said, actually, we didn't find anyone. We hired a private detective. On the commercial break of us being on the show, because they brought us on to make a plea that maybe our biological family would show up. We come back, Steve says, just kidding. We did find your biological mother. She's here. Come on out, Eleanor. And that's how we all kind of reunite. So that's the story. I know it was a long road around, but.
Well, it's a really powerful story. And if you haven't seen this outtake of that episode, it's just incredible. And there's so many elements to what you just shared that are so powerful. The roots that you came from, what God took you out of and brought you into a place. You're very modest about your own accomplishments. You mentioned your sister's straight A's, but I know you were self-taught and playing 6 instruments by the 10th grade and had quite a successful run in worship leading and so forth. And so I know that what God did through you and your sister and really through your parents was just tremendous. But to go on to this show and be reunited with your birth family, man, it had to have been just an overwhelming experience. I think one thing that's really powerful too is that your sister was a little apprehensive about it and your parents were encouraging of it. I often see the reverse, that the adoptive parents may be apprehensive about that search for the biological roots. So can you speak into that and maybe give some encouragement to our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I, not to speak for my sister, but I do think, based on kind of some of the moments we had backstage, Steve Harvey, that a fear of hers would be, or was, that maybe if we met, they wouldn't want to talk to us, right? That our mother wouldn't want us. And so she would receive this kind of rejection thing that she didn't have to worry about when she didn't know my biological mother. And so it's like, hey, our life is fine the way it is. Like I've not been rejected, right, publicly, or I don't know there's nothing about the story that I know for real. So let me just live in the acceptance that we already had, So I think that was her biggest fear. I just got to talk about my dad. He is 84 now. So he adopted us when he was 50 something. I'm 32. So you do the math. My dad's a leader. And he always took it upon himself to lead us down certain paths at the right time. Sam, it's time for you to drive. Sam, it's time for you to do this. Sam, you need to shift here. Sarah, you need to go here. Boom, 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 boom. And because he was such a leader, and I just want to point it out, I mean, he wasn't perfect. Again, middle class. We didn't grow up rich. Middle class, average kind of Black family. I call it, we didn't grow up in the hood, but we were like hood adjacent. We were a couple streets away from the hood. So I had friends in the hood. I had friends that had a lot, more money. So we weren't rich, but he was rich in terms of values and character and Jesus kind of thing, which I want to say came later in life for him. Because again, when he adopted us, moments before that, before he even met my mom, he was married twice. So this was his third marriage. He had just given his life to Christ almost a year, prior to that. And so this whole Jesus thing was kind of new, but he had fallen into it and grew in it over the years. So he wasn't perfect, but he always led us. And he did such a great job, him and my mother, of raising us with the idea of Christ and with a strong love and acceptance from him and from our family members, in terms of his, brothers and his sisters and aunties and nieces and cousins and so on and so forth, that we never had a moment where it was like, oh, we need to go find our biological family. He woke up one day and said, it's time. In other words, here's what I want to say. He looked at his role as our guides, as our mentor, as our father, as our parents, to make us the best that we could be. And in that moment, he said, listen, we've done this, okay, Sarah, you've graduated, you've succeeded. Sam, you got your record deals, you're in ministry, you're doing well. Great. Next step, last piece to the puzzle, you got to go find out where you came from. And in his mind, it was not impossible, but it would be difficult. And again, had we not done it, I think we would have been fine. But I think in his mind, he said, in order to really maximize where you're going, you need to know where you came from. I also think that something that was big about that was in his mind, he's going, hey, Sam and Sarah, that's my twin, whether you want to meet them or not right now, you may need to know something later. And so I want to make sure that we've hit we've dotted every I, we've crossed every T, so that you can have everything that you need to be everything that God wants you to be. And so that, I think, from that place of constantly being a steward over our lives, I really do think he got the concept of what parenting is all about. And it's there, we don't belong to him. We belong to God. And it's his job to steward now what God has given him. And to, we talk about the parable of the man with the talents, right? The man who had one, he didn't do anything. The one with 5 multiplied it to 10. And the one with 10 multiplied it to 20, but the one with 1 didn't do anything, as we said, and God was not pleased. So I think that parable is very relevant to parenting, because God wants us to steward over what he's given us and make it bigger. He wants us to make it better. He wants us to maximize it. And so I believe that my father viewed us that way as well. And so this was the last piece.
Yeah, I love that. And having read the story, I know that I can see God's handiwork, because there are elements of redemption that came through that introduction, because you learned things about your family in those roots, and you know how to break some of the generational things that had been repeating for many generations. And so that insight, now you have a stewardship around that story to create a new piece of the family tree, right? To uproot some of those things that aren't glorifying to God.
100%. I would say this, this book would not be possible without that introduction. And I just want to talk about how huge, and this is not a book plug, but I want to talk about how big this campaign has gotten, to where you spoke about, I think, Hillsong earlier. I think you did. And, that went out to all of Australia. And we were telling this story, and people were being blessed by the reunification of our family, not because they felt like, oh my gosh, this is a beautiful story, which it was a beautiful story, or not because, oh, we met our biological, no, but because they saw how God rescued us and was saving us and could move. And now, from my dad's prompting and from his leading, it has led to a greater story, truly a greater story, where people all around the world are now being impacted by the idea that God can take a mess and turn it into a miracle. And the understanding of how messed up our beginning was came from us reuniting with our family. So it made the story even bigger. And it allowed for me to be able to say that doesn't matter how dark your situation is, if you'll let God in. And I want to punctuate the idea that my parents had just given their life to Christ. If you'll let God in, he will use you to save someone else, but he'll also rewrite your story, and he'll take your mess, especially, when COVID-19, he'll take your mess and turn it into a miracle, and he can do it. So I just, none of this would be possible without him, without that moment, without that reunification.
Yeah, I think about the exponential impact from your story now and this book that's being written is tremendous. I want to quote something from your book and transition gears for just a minute. You say, in addition to drilling into my heart and head that Sarah and I were not less than for being adopted, but rather special and chosen, Dad also taught us that our Blackness was not a liability, but an asset, not something to despise, but something to treasure. That being Black was about being born great. I love that. And, you know, in this time in our country where racism and oppression are at the forefront of our minds and need to be, right? This is a very relevant piece of your story for our audience because the majority of our foster and adoptive parents they have transracial families that they're dealing with race issues in their own home and trying to navigate this without a roadmap. So, you know, can you just lean into that and kind of speak to how can we, as this parent with transracial families, how can we do a better job to create change in this next generation of kids?
Wow. You know, I'm going to use an analogy and bring it back around full circle. You know, in the book, I talk a lot about the mentors in my life that came and really helped to connect me to my next level. What am I saying? That my father, he was a barber, you know, entrepreneur, pastored for 4 years, very small 20-member church. And there was nothing against him because he was incredible, but he wasn't a musician, right? I mean, he didn't play instruments. He preached, so I picked up some of that. But running massive organizations, like I'm sure he could have, but he just had never had that experience. I did arts for a really long time, musical theater. My dad never wrote musicals. There were certain things my dad couldn't teach me that he knew he couldn't teach me. And so what he did was he put me in circles with other groups of people that could teach me what he could not teach me. And I think, again, that's stewardship. And that's a phenomenal metaphor that parallels what happens in the life of an interracial adoption and family. There are certain things from a color perspective that you will never be able, one, to relate to, but there are certain things you'll never be able to teach your child that is from an opposite race. And so the same way that my father noticed there was something about me and my sister that, hey, you know, I don't play piano. I'm not on stage like that. I need to get him around people. Woo! I'm getting excited. I need to get him around people that can help connect the dots for him that I could never connect. I'll give you a story. Freddie Hendricks is in the book a lot. He is one of the most successful theater directors and creators of all time. I mean, he's got so many people that are on Broadway, the lead of Broadway shows from Fela to Cinderella. I mean, whatever. I mean, so many, you name a Broadway show, he has somebody in it that came from him. Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live came from him. And I could just go down the list of all of these superstars that he raised. I wanted to meet him. There was something about him. I was like, man, I need to know. And so at the school I was at, the high school, they were taking a trip down to see Freddie and a show that he was directing called Soweto, 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 A Township is Calling, which was based on the South African apartheid. I had no idea of the level of art that he taught. So I missed the bus to go to the show. I miss it. And it was down at the Rialto Theater here in Georgia, which is connected to Georgia State. And I got up, I said, Dad, I'm going to miss it. Like this was huge. And the school, I went to Performing Arts High School. They took everyone down. My dad, he took off work, said, let's go. We're going down to the theater, and put me in the truck. And we drove, and he went to the show with me. And not only did he go to the show with me, he said, you need to be connected to them. I'm getting emotional. there's something about them. There's something that they have that's going to unlock something in you that I can't unlock, but I can unlock if I steward you right and put you with the people that can. Whew. And he stayed after that show with me. And he said, we're going to get you to Freddie, and walked with me to Freddie and stood in the meeting. And not only did he do that, but Freddie would become my mentor for the next 6 years. And he would take me to every rehearsal. He let me be around him as many. I mean, it was just insane. But my father recognized something, and it changed my life forever. There was a level of confidence and belief that came out of Freddie, and the idea of greatness that Freddie gave me, that led to the book, that led to the TV, that led to the radio, that led to everything I'm doing now. Obviously my dad, but a large part of it was Freddie and my dad's leaning and understanding that there's something that he has that you need to get. And so I want to encourage all of my interracial families out there to not be ashamed. I feel like this is the voice of the Lord. Not to be ashamed that you're not Black or brown, or I don't know how many white, Black families we have adopting white kids, but that you're not white. I mean, don't be ashamed that you aren't the color of the kid that you've adopted. Just accept that that's okay. My dad wasn't an artist, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the opportunity you have now is to fill them with the things that they need to become the best that they can be. So it means sacrificing. It means finding those mentors. It means finding those circles and doing everything you can, again, to put them in the environment that would cultivate them and make them the best that they could be. I think we have to continue. I'm a new father, so I got a stepdaughter, which is my bonus daughter, which is kind of like adoption. But I recognize my role to be a cultivator, not an owner, but a cultivator. So.
Yeah, I love it. That your story it's a mixture of pain and beauty and a redemption and all of that you're talking about, those mentors in your life that helped to develop you and pulled greatness out of you. And
hallelujah.
we see it today. And so I cannot strongly encourage you enough to go and get this book. Your faith will be encouraged. Your faith will be stretched. It will help you to see, if you are an adoptive parent, will help you to see this maybe with fresh eyes, especially as many of you are in the trenches and you are battling and struggling and you're in tests and trials. And when you connect your story to God's story and it leads to a greater story, that is the end goal, right? And so you're going to be encouraged by this book. You need to run out and pre-order it because it's coming out next week, right?
Tuesday. I'm 7 days out. I don't know when this is posting, but August 4th. So we're days away from this hitting the world. I'm overwhelmed. I'm excited. I'm in anticipation. I'm running harder than I've ever ran.
Well, Sam, I hope you get a nap soon. And where can people find you? Where can they follow you to keep tabs on you?
Yeah, I mean, if they hit me up on Instagram or any social media platform, just Sam Collier. If you Google it, if we're doing our job right, I should pop up. But I think beyond that, if you're going, all right, I'm going to get lost, just go to agreaterstory.org, not .com, but agreaterstory.org, and you can find everything there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Sam, it's just an honor to speak with you today and be with you. And I'm just so grateful and just wish you the very best in God's next step of your journey.
Jenny, listen, everything you're doing is changing lives. I always say if we can get everyone in the world, right, that has the resources to adopt or to foster to do that, we could make a huge dent. And you are a massive part of making that happen. You're saving lives. Adoption, foster care, it saves lives if it's done right. And so I just want to say to you publicly, thank you for your sacrifice. It matters. It's bigger than you think. And I know you think it's big, but it's bigger than you think. It has eternal implications. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.